Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The U.S. Federal Reserve holds interest rates steady, but warns that inflation and unemployment risks have risen. Economic Secretary Arsenio Balisacan calls for more free trade agreements to expand market access and boost long-term growth. And at the Vatican, black smoke from the Sistine Chapel's chimney signals an inconclusive first vote, as cardinals have yet to elect a new pope on day one of the conclave. The U.S. Federal Reserve holds interest rates steady, defying political pressure from President Donald Trump, who has been calling for lower borrowing costs. The U.S. Central Bank warns that risks to the economy are growing, with both inflation and unemployment pressures tilting higher, as the Federal Reserve weighs the impact of President Trump's tariff policies. Despite these clouds, Fed Chair Jerome Powell says that the economy remains fundamentally strong and that current monetary policy gives the Fed flexibility to act swiftly should conditions change.
The tariff increases announced so far have been significantly larger than anticipated. All of these policies are still evolving, however, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain. As economic conditions evolve, we'll continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the outlook, and the balance of risks.
Trump previously called Fed Chair Jerome Powell a major loser for not acting faster to boost the economy. But on Monday, he backpedaled on earlier threats to remove him. Let's take a look at how global markets moved overnight. U.S. stocks advanced Wednesday in a choppy session after the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady as expected. The Fed acknowledged growing risks on both sides, with inflation still stubbornly high and unemployment starting to tick up, clouding the economic outlook. The central bank also cited the uncertainty caused by President Donald Trump's tariff policies as a key factor behind their decision to pause.
The markets hate uncertainty, and by the way, so does the Fed. So the Fed doesn't want to do anything until we get clarity, and that's going to take some time. That being said, let's be clear, the Fed should be cutting. The historic relationship between Fed funds and the 10-year Treasury rate is about a 1% differential. And right now, we're looking at a 4.25 to a 4.5 on the Fed funds rate, with the 10-year Treasury right in that range. So realistically, in a normal world, the Fed funds rate should be somewhere between 3.25 and 3.5.
The Dow Jones gained 0.7%, the S&P 500 high by 0.4%, and the Nasdaq inched up by 0.3%. Over in Europe, the stocks there fell. London's FTSE 100 dipped 0.4%, while Germany's DAX dropped 0.6%, and France's CAC 40 lost a bit more, down by 0.9%. Here at home, the government's outstanding debt rises to 16.68 trillion pesos as of end March, marking a slight increase from the previous month. Data from the Bureau of Treasury shows this is higher than the 16.63 trillion pesos recorded at the end of February. This is also higher than the 14.93 trillion pesos recorded at the end of March 2024. The rise in debt comes amid a sluggish growth environment and a shift in monetary policy, with investors watching closely how the country manages its fiscal position as interest rates begin to ease. The stronger peso has yet to make a significant impact on slowing inflation, despite appreciating against the U.S. dollar in recent weeks. The central bank notes that while the peso has been appreciating against the greenback, the impact on prices typically takes several weeks or months to materialize, particularly for imported goods like food, fuel, and industrial inputs. A stronger peso is good news for importers who now need less local currency to purchase goods from abroad. The comment comes as inflation cools to 1.4% in April, the lowest level in more than 5 years. The BSP says exchange rate moves could provide further relief as long as global supply conditions remain stable. Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan is downplaying concerns that the drop in inflation signals weak consumer demand. Balisacan says that the sub-2% inflation in March and April, while unusual, is not a sign of economic stagnation. He notes that domestic demand remains intact, and if there are any signs of softening, they are likely tied to global economic uncertainty and not to internal weakness. He says that the lower inflation should be seen as an opportunity, potentially creating room for policy support and greater purchasing power. The Department of Economy, Planning and Development, or DEP-DEV, says that the Philippines should pursue more free trade agreements, or FTAs, beyond its top trading partners to widen market access and to stimulate economic growth. DEP-DEV Secretary Arsenio Balisacan stresses the urgency of expanding trade deals, citing Singapore's extensive FTA network as a model amid the weakening influence of the World Trade Organization. He notes that having an FTA with the United States, for example, could help reduce tariffs on Philippine exports, making them more competitive in a tightening global trade environment. Balisacan also emphasizes the need to revise the country's sectoral negotiation strategy and strengthen coordination among agencies, with the Department of Foreign Affairs taking the lead in trade talks to ensure that Philippine interests are effectively represented in future FTAs. While a dedicated trade office was once proposed, Balisacan says it may no longer be necessary if existing interagency efforts are well coordinated and strategically aligned. The Philippines' unemployment rate edged up to 3.9% in March, despite a decline in the total number of jobless Filipinos compared to both the previous month and a year ago. We have this package.
Over 1 million jobs wiped out in just 1 month. The unemployment rate inched up to 3.9% in March, up from 3.8% in February, pushing more Filipinos into the ranks of the jobless. And the underemployment crisis worsens. The number of underemployed workers surged by over 1.48 million in just a month, from 4.96 million in February to 6.44 in March, signaling a growing struggle for Filipinos to find adequate work. Some of the largest contributors to the Philippine economy, including agriculture, construction, and manufacturing, recorded massive job losses, highlighting the strain on the labor market.
May mga nakita tayong pagbaba dito sa construction of buildings. Yun yung malaking nag-contribute dito talaga sa month-on-month natin. Posible na may mga stoppage tayo.
Elementary occupations and service workers who make up a vital part of the economy also suffered sharp job cuts. Meanwhile, the public sector saw a sharp decline in employment, with many government positions remaining vacant due to the ongoing election hiring ban.
We feel na affected ito doon sa ating election ban. May ban pa kasi on hiring sa mga government positions. And ito ay sa tingin namin may impact dito sa pag-reduce ng employed persons, particularly for this particular sector, yung government, yung public administration, defense, compulsory social security. Pero sa tingin namin, pagbalik naman, kasi yung ban matatapos na right after the election, babalik na naman ito. Siguro yung mga hiring lang medyo na-delay.
Even as campaign spending was expected to lift employment, the latest data shows it was not enough to offset the declines.
May mga contribution siya, but it does not really provide that substantial increase. Mayroon kasi tayong mga fixed talaga na mga jobs. Pinakamalaki natin na sector ay talaga doon sa wage and salary. So doon may impact.
DepDev hopes that the newly launched Trabaho para sa Bayan plan will provide a lifeline to the millions of Filipinos struggling to find decent work. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
We have this just in. The Philippine economy expands by 5.4% in the first quarter of the year. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority shows this is higher than the 5.3% recorded in the fourth quarter of last year, but lower than the 5.9% print in the first quarter of 2024. The PSA explains that this is due to the growth in wholesale and retail trade, repair of motor vehicles, financial insurance activities, and manufacturing. On another front, for the first time, online gaming becomes the biggest moneymaker for the country's gaming regulator. Total gross gaming revenue jumped by 27.44% year-on-year to 104.12 billion pesos in the first quarter. Licensed casinos generated 49.28 billion, accounting for 47.32% of the total, slightly lower than before as online competition continues to erode their market share. PAGCOR-operated casinos, meanwhile, contributed just 3.45 billion pesos, or 3.31% of the industry's total take. PAGCOR Chairman and CEO Alejandro Tenco describes the rise of e-gaming as a critical turning point for the Philippine gaming industry, reflecting a global shift in consumer behavior toward digital entertainment. He says that this trend opens new opportunities for growth, tax revenue, and innovation, but also requires tighter regulatory oversight to protect players and maintain market integrity. The strategic focus now, he notes, is to balance industry expansion with responsible gaming policies as PAGCOR modernizes its framework to compete on the global stage. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most, your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on Asian markets this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is up by 0.3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index up by a little bit more, up by 0.5%. Shanghai's Composite up by 0.2%. And Singapore's Straits Times Index going the other way, down by 0.6%. Here at home, Philippine stocks climbed to their highest level in 4 months on Wednesday, yesterday, riding on stronger sentiment following the sharp drop in inflation and growing hopes for a rate cut by the Bangko Sentral. The main gauge rose 0.7% to 64.65, its best close since early January, as investors priced in looser monetary policy ahead. Now, trading remained healthy with net value turnover at nearly 8 billion pesos. Now, looking ahead, analysts say equities could see further upside in the near term if rate cut bets hold and global risk appetite improves. Checking on the main gauge right now, as of 10:18 this morning, it's higher by 0.7% to 65.11. All shares index up as well, up by 0.4%. As for the sub-indices, all are trading in the green except for the mining and oil counter, which is flat with a downward bias right now. Total volume is at 106 million, while value is at 708 million pesos. Market breadth is positive with 63 advancers, 47 decliners, and 41 stocks unchanged. Now, in the currency market, the peso opens slightly weaker at 55.50 to the greenback, depreciating from its previous close of 55.40. Now, a major safety push is rolling out on Philippine expressways as the Land Transportation Office cracks down on reckless driving. The LTO says most road accidents are not due to bad roads or weather, but to driver error, underscoring the urgency of stricter enforcement. Our mobility correspondent, G. Baroga, has this report.
Zero accident. That's the big goal of the Land Transportation Office. Their deputized enforcers are now being deployed across the country's expressways. This nationwide crackdown follows a surge in deadly crashes, most of them caused not by bad roads or weather, but by human error. According to the PNP Highway Patrol Group, over 31,000 road crashes were recorded in 2024, over 4,000 of which happened on expressways. And the main culprit? Reckless driving. From overspeeding to improper turns, basic driver mistakes continue to top the list of crash causes, avoidable errors that are proving fatal. Most of the crashes involve cars, which account for more than 17,000. Motorcycles came in next with over 15,000 incidents, while buses were involved in just over 1,000.
Ang problema pag bus ang involved, more often than not, may fatalities. Diba? Pag sa expressway nangyari, it's not much. 13% of all accidents happen inside the expressway. Karamihan ng expressway natin are all located here in Luzon. Isa lang ang nasa Cebu.
That's why the LTO is boosting its presence in expressways, from more enforcers to more lights, speed guns, and mobile patrols operating round the clock. And reforms are also underway in how drivers are trained and licensed.
Wala nang face-to-face kasi baka doon pa nagkakaroon ng magic. No? With this development, once we complete this entire infrastructure, this online infrastructure, then that po ng ating loopholes sa driver's license natin, masasagot na po natin. Strict implementation lang.
Transport Secretary Vince Dizon earlier said the government is open to teaming up with the private sector and civil society groups to tackle road safety together.
And yes, we will work with them. No? We will work with the different groups and consult with them and ask for ideas and also help in enforcement. No? Kasi importante dito and help in also bringing to our information all these incidents.
The message is clear. Most crashes are preventable, and road safety isn't just up to the government, it's everyone's responsibility. So whether you're driving a car, a motorcycle, or a bus, drive safe and help prevent another life lost on our roads. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
It's a story of tragedy, but also a wake-up call for infrastructure, integrity, accountability, and public spending. A 4-year-old child and a man died after a vehicle crashed into a steel bollard outside NAIA Terminal 1. That bollard, meant to protect pedestrians, buckled on impact, raising questions about construction standards, material quality, and procurement practices. With us this morning is engineer Ping Aliling, one of the country's most respected figures in construction and urban development, a former Undersecretary for Human Settlements and past national president of the Construction Project Management Association of the Philippines. He joins us to talk about the cost of corruption, the risk to public safety, and why infrastructure integrity matters for business governance and investor confidence. Good morning, Ping.
Good
Thanks
morning,
for being
Maiki.
with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we wanted to get your reaction as an insider in this industry. You've been in the business for over 20 years. You've overseen some of the biggest and most complex projects in the country. When you heard about the incident at NAIA 1, what first came to mind?
Obviously, the bollard did not function as intended. The bollards are there to protect the pedestrians. Then we know what happened. No? Then there are a lot of speculations going around, but nothing is conclusive because all the documents should be reviewed, site inspections should be done. But as we know, the president already instructed concerned parties to do the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, that's exactly what the bollards should have done. Harang para sa kotse, di ba?
Yes.
That's exactly what they should have done. I'm sure there's a lot of speculation, a lot of opinions going around, especially within your industry. As you mentioned, the president is conducting an investigation into the matter. How long should this investigation take, provided all the paperwork is there?
It shouldn't take long. 3 to 5 days should be enough to assess, technical assessment. Plus, you inspect the site. Because yung nakita natin di ba? Yung particular bollard na yun, the way it was connected, the way it was installed, talagang hindi yan kakayanin na harangin yung kotse. Now, ang tanong dyan, ganyan ba lahat yung mga nakakabit? So, site inspection will show us na kung ganyan lahat na nakakabit, most probably, yung design, ganon. Pero kung iba-iba, merong naka-embed, merong naka-tornilyo, merong naka-welding, then something is wrong. Bakit iba-iba?
In your opinion, Ping, why might it not have worked? I mean, there's the design and then there's the implementation phase. Why might it not have worked?
Well, assuming the design calls for embedment, naka-embed siya. Pero yung nakita natin naka-bolt, baka yung site condition, hindi siya allowed dun mag-bolt. Baka may tatamaan siyang structure, may tatamaan siyang utility. So kasama dapat yun sa investigahan.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that investigation, what should a proper independent probe look like?
It should cover the whole process from design, construction, and as-built conditions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ping, can you walk us through how government infrastructure projects are typically initiated, funded, and built?
Well, initiated yan, yung need ng agency, kinukuha na natin ng budget either through GAA or foreign funding. Then, ang next i-decide yan sino mag-implement ng project. For example, school buildings. Alam naman natin na walang expertise yung mga taga-DepEd to do their own building. So most probably, kukuha sila na mag-implement, most likely DPWH. Now dito ngayon nagkakaproblema minsan. Yung requirement ng end user In this case, example natin, school building, DepEd. Pag hindi yan nasabi dun sa mag-i-implement, i-expect na end product mo, hindi mako-comply yung requirements ng DepEd. So, dito papasok, dapat prepared lahat ng ahensya, kumpleto yung guidelines nila. So, when the time comes na magpapagawa sila, yung building code plus yung guidelines nila, ang susundin nung mag-i-implement.
All right. Now, a lot of people are speculating that baka because of this is because of corruption. Talking about corruption in the construction industry in the Philippines, how widespread is it? I mean, hindi lang to sa, it's not just in government, it's in the private sector as well.
Yeah.
How widespread would you say corruption is in this industry in 2025?
The corruption is, as you said, a problem of the private sector and the government. Ang masakit dito, ang nabibiktima dahil sa corruption is yung mga innocent people, yung mga end users. Bakit? Dahil sa corruption, ang nagsasuffer is yung quality. Now, for us to address corruption, which I think sinasabi nila imposible, pero pag in-address natin yung quality, which I think kayang i-address yan, kasi lahat naman, including the contractors, the designers, nandyan lahat ng requirements na dapat nila i-comply. So if we address quality, liliit ngayon yung elbow room nila for corruption. So when you address quality, dalawa kaagad yung na-resolve mo. Safety and corruption. Then later on, kung gusto pa natin talagang, of course, ang premise nito may political will. As I said, sa private sector meron din corruption, pero hindi ganun ka-rampant or problema yung quality. Kasi sa private sector, malinaw, no? Malinaw kung sino liable, malinaw kung sino magiging accountable. So using the same formula, kung kaya yan ng private sector, kaya rin dapat yan ng government. In short, linisin natin yung proseso, linisin natin yung guidelines, set natin yung rules, because alam naman natin ang good governance, one aspect of good governance is your procedures should be auditable. Kaya wala mangyari, nagiging reactive tayo, mag-iimbestiga. Tapos at the end of the day, walang nagiging accountable. Dahil yung guidelines natin, yung rules natin, pag in-audit, hindi alam yung mga dapat i-audit or hindi malinaw yung mga nakasulat doon sa specifications.
Integrity is so important in this industry. The integrity of the builders directly equates to the integrity of the actual structure that's being constructed.
Yes.
In your opinion, Ping, what are the effects of corruption on this? What are the effects of corruption?
Well, corruption is negative talaga yung effect ng corruption, no? Ang problema, sumosobra. Pag sumobra, nakukompromise na talaga yung end product. So you have to moderate this, reduce this as soon as possible. Now, simulan natin to dun sa mga ongoing construction projects. Hindi natin to gagawin sa future projects. Kasi yung mga ongoing projects na yan, dapat yung implementing agency, pagka mali ang ginagawa, huwag niyong tanggapin. Until the time na hindi yan ini-issuehan ng certificate of acceptance, pwede mong sabihin sa contractor, boss, hindi comply ang ginagawa mo, ulitin mo yan, hindi namin tatanggapin. Yun ang first line ng defense ng safety ng public. Yung mga nasa gobyerno, gawin natin yung dapat natin gawin.
And Ping, can you touch on the economic consequences, the economic cost of corruption?
Well, pag masama yung sa infrastructure na yung resulta, nagre-resulta may mga downtime tayo. These structures are essential. Tubig na, kunyari, may nasirang tulay, isasarado natin. No? Pag sinarado natin ng 2 buwan, 3 buwan, nagta-traffic. So, nahihirapan yung delivery ng materials, yung mga goods na mga dadalhin sa factory, etc. So, we have to make sure that these are properly built. Now, hindi tayo pwedeng reactive. Yung mga nakatayo na, dapat yung mga ahensya natin, tuloy-tuloy yung pag-assess. Huwag natin antayin mag-iba, huwag natin antayin masira, huwag natin antayin may mamatay. Let's be proactive, assess, then investigate, then retrofit kung kailangan, or mag-repair tayo kung anong dapat gawin.
Broadly speaking, Ping, what needs to change para ma-eradicate, ma-minimize ang corruption dito sa
Well,
bansa?
number one, political will lang yan . Kaya yan . I've been in this industry for more than 20 years. Hindi ko na sinusukuan yung this has been my advocacy, no? Kasi corruption talagang nakaka-affect yan ng safety ng public. Isa lang naman ang reason kaya ako hindi sinusukuan to . Kaya . Kayang gawin basta may political will. So it should start from the government, from our leaders. Alam mo, yung 1 year ko sa gobyerno, no, as Undersecretary of Housing, nakita ko yung mga tao sa gobyerno, matitino at competent. Nag-aantay lang yan ng malinaw at tamang marching orders. I'm sure they can deliver.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in this day and age, with tech, coming into every industry, what can we do? What tech tools can we use? How can tech help us to minimize corruption in both public and private sector construction programs?
Well, digitalization. No? But before we go to digitalization, we have to standardize our audit procedures. Ano yung mga forms na gagamitin, ano yung mga inspection procedures, etc. Then, using the internet, using online, i-post natin lahat for transparency. So yung publiko mismo, alam nila kung ano yung baseline. Ito yung requirement, ito yung ginawa ng contractor, pasado ba yan o hindi. Self-audit ang kailangan dito eh. Transparency and accountability.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in closing thing, you've worked with the government and you've worked with the private sector. What is your message to the people building our country's infrastructure?
The government and the private sector should help each other. Marami ako nakakausap sa private sector na willing tumulong. Basta tama ang hangarin, no? Tama ang objective, tama ang agenda. Ngayon, the government is the first line of defense, no? Huwag niyong tanggapin pag mali. Kung kailangan niyo ng tulong ng private sector, I'm sure, nandiyan yung mga organizations natin ready tumulong. Kasi safety nila yan eh. Safety ng publiko. And yung mga kawani natin sa gobyerno, no? Sinabi ko nga kanina, competent yan. Ako na nagsasabi, competent, magagaling. Gamitin na natin ng tama, makaka-deliver po yan.
Okay, thank you so much for your time,
Salamat
Engineer
po.
Ping, a leader in the construction industry in the Philippines.
Thank you.
We're taking a short break. Business 360. We'll be right back.
The legendary Quiz Master is back.
We heard you. So we're bringing back intelligence to Philippine TV with Bilyonaryo Quizbee. Bilyonaryo Quizbee will feature questions on science and technology, arts and literature, mathematics, history and geography, social sciences, and general information. We look forward to seeing you rise to the challenge and compete for the title of the very first Bilyonaryo Quizbee champion.
The questions that matter, the answers you deserve.
This is where ideas clash, visions collide, and perspective change.
Join us live, unfiltered, uncompromising.
Your opinion counts.
Abogado, Thursday,
8:30 p.m. only on
Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Facts matter more than ever. This election isn't just making headlines, it's making history. Led by veteran broadcasters Corina Sanchez Rojas, Pinky Webb, and Ray Langit. Bilyonaryo News Channel and DWAR Abante Radio. We're committed to bringing you clear and comprehensive election coverage. From the campaign trail to your local ballot, we're there. We're combining boots-on-the-ground reporting with the speed of social. It's not just on the news. It's in your feed. Live updates. The voices that matter most. Together, we deliver.
Your voice, 2025 elections agenda.
Through the insightful discussions and in-depth analysis, we always empowered viewers to better understand the complexities of public affairs. Congratulations, On Point, for winning the Best Public Affairs Program at the 38 PMPC Star Awards for Television. Only here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
On Trade Talks, we learn the tricks of the trade from starting and growing a business.
We also got you covered on the latest tech trends. And we will keep you up to date on what's new in the lifestyle of the crazy rich.
Tune in to Trade Talks.
Catch Trade Talks. Tune into Trade Talks
Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Metro Alliance Holdings and Equities Corporation, led by the Gatchalian family, is mapping out a comeback following the resolution of a decade-long legal dispute with its Iranian partners over a long-stalled petrochemical project in Bataan. With legal cases dropped in January, the company now plans to recover a 347.6 million peso receivable from affiliate Polymax, or potentially acquire Polymax's remaining 20% stake in the Bataan plant if talks fail to reach a resolution. The Bataan polyethylene plant, idle since 2016, may be rehabilitated or put up for sale by 2026 as Metro Alliance eyes strategic options to recapture value from the asset. To reinforce its financial position, Metro Alliance will launch a stock rights offering and seek approval to raise its authorized capital to 5 billion pesos. The company is also banking on growth from its logistics subsidiary, which is expanding into cold storage, hospice care, and ferry operations to diversify revenue streams and tap new markets. SM Investments Corporation's consolidated net income reaches 20.1 billion pesos in the first quarter. In a press release, the Bilyonaryo C-led firm says its first quarter net income rose nearly 20% to 20.2 billion pesos, up from 18.4 billion in the same period last year. The company cites broad-based growth across its core business segments as the main driver of stronger earnings. SM Investments Corporation's president and CEO, Frederick Dibuncho, says consumer confidence remains strong and that the company's diversified businesses are well-positioned to serve demand across all categories. He adds that the group continues to invest in innovation and expansion to sustain their long-term growth trajectory. However, SM says it continues to monitor global macroeconomic uncertainties, including volatile commodity prices, geopolitical tensions, and interest rate risks, even as it remains positive about the Philippine economy's resilience and growth prospects. Poll service provider Miru Systems gives its assurance on the integrity of the automated counting machines to be used in the May 12 midterm elections. Miru Systems says it follows all global industry standards when it comes to the security features of the vote counting machines. The company has delivered over 110,000 new units to the Commission on Elections. Under the setup, Miru will handle ballot scanning, vote counting at each precinct, and the printing of election returns. A separate provider, I1, will be in charge of transmitting the results in line with the COMELEC's efforts to promote transparency and systems integrity.
We follow industry standard of the security features. We do have 14-inch screen for the voter to check their ballot marks. And we also have auto alignment to make sure that there will be almost no paper jam. Okay? And we also have the QR codes to make sure that they're verified after the voting hours.
The Commission on Elections supports granting tax exemptions for teachers who will be serving as election workers in next week's midterm polls. This comes after the Alliance of Concerned Teachers called for overtime pay, including a standard 25% premium for teachers working extra hours on election day. COMELEC Chairman George Garcia says he fully supports additional compensation and benefits for teachers who will serve as members of the Electoral Board.
Kaya nga nilaban po natin yung dagdag na honoraria para po sa kanila across the board. Sana nga po mapakinggan ng ating Kongreso muli yung pong panawagan na wag na natin silang i-tax sa kanila pong makikitain sa araw po ng eleksyon.
As long as nasa batas naman po yan ay i-implement po natin. Ang problema ay wala pong exemption na pagdating sa batas natin yan. So kinakailangan po talaga na may mapatawan ng buwis. May honoraria na yan kasi papasok doon sa pondo ng DepEd na pangsweldo nila. So papasok po siya sa kita nila as employees, as teachers. So talagang papasok siya doon sa bracketing. Kaya naman na ang ibig sabihin yan ay parte ng kanilang salary.
Malolos, Bulacan becomes the latest campaign stop for the Alianza senatorial slate as local endorsements pour in alongside a controversial visit to a state university. Former Senator Manny Pacquiao picks up the backing of Bulacan Governor Daniel Fernando, who is seeking re-election. Pacquiao, in turn, pledges to prioritize flood control and disaster preparedness programs if elected. Meanwhile, the Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura, one of the country's largest agri-coalitions, endorses 4 other Alianza candidates, Tito Soto, Camille Villar, Benher Abalos, and Ping Lacson, citing their track records in supporting the agriculture sector. But the visit was not without controversy. Student activists staged a protest outside Bulacan State University, condemning the use of school grounds for a candidate press conference. Police presence was deployed to maintain order. Former President Rodrigo Duterte says he is encouraging his youngest daughter, Kitty Duterte, to follow in his footsteps and enter politics. This according to his longtime partner, Hanilet Avesenia, who revealed the former president's advice during the meeting de avance of PDP Laban senatorial candidate Rodante Marcoleta at the Philippine Arena in Bulacan on Tuesday.
Ako ay isang 21-year-old college student lamang at ayaw ko sanang makisali sa politika. Pero nang dahil sa pagkidnap at pag-abuso nila sa tatay ko, nandito ako ngayon para ipaglaban hindi lamang ang pamilya ko, kundi ang bansang Pilipinas.
Alam mo, umiiyak yung anak ko kasi kung pwede lang sana hindi siya mapasok sa politika. Ano narinig ko, sinabi ng papa niya, mag-aral ka. At sumunod ka rin sa yapa ko.
Kitty and her mother also attended the campaign rally of the PDP Laban senatorial candidates in Alabang, the party's last stop before their meeting de avance in Manila. We're taking a quick breather. Business 360 will be right back. The U.S. Federal Health Agency plans to establish a national database of autism patients enrolled in Medicare and Medicaid, a move aimed at improving care coordination, resource allocation, and long-term research on neurodevelopmental disorders. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that the database will help researchers identify possible causes of autism spectrum disorder, calling the condition an epidemic that could be prevented. The initiative is part of a broader $50 million federal research program on autism. The project, however, has sparked debate, with critics raising concerns about data privacy and the ethical implications of possible eugenics-related applications. In response, officials stress that the program will strictly follow U.S. privacy laws and that research will focus on tracking diagnosis patterns over time and not genetic profiling. On another front, Pakistan's prime minister warns that India will face serious consequences after an airstrike that killed at least 31 people and left dozens more injured. Pakistan claims it shot down 5 Indian aircraft in response as tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors escalate rapidly. Global powers are urging both sides to show restraint, fearing that further escalation could destabilize the entire South Asian region and rattle global markets already on edge over geopolitical risks. India says it targeted 9 terrorist infrastructure sites in Pakistan and has vowed to respond if Islamabad retaliates. The escalating conflict comes at a precarious time for Pakistan's $350 billion economy, which is still recovering from a recent financial crisis, with investor confidence and regional trade flows hanging in the balance. Now in the U.S., entertainment giant Walt Disney Company beats earnings expectations with overall sales jumping 7% to $23.6 billion in the first quarter of the year. Disney Plus subscribers grew to 126 million in the first quarter, adding over 1 million new signups, defying analysts' expectations of a decline. The gain came as a surprise boost for Disney's streaming business, which remains a key growth driver. Still, the company trails far behind market leader Netflix, which is estimated to have around 300 million users through Netflix, though Netflix has stopped releasing exact subscription numbers. Black smoke rises from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel at 3 a.m. this morning, signaling an inconclusive first ballot by the cardinals gathered for the Papal conclave. Thousands of Catholic faithful filled St. Peter's Square, waiting in silence for the smoke signal. The black smoke appeared more than 3 hours after the conclave began, longer than the first round in 2013 that eventually elected the late Pope Francis. Under tradition, when a new pope is elected, white smoke will rise from that same chimney. Filipino Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle is widely seen as one of the top contenders to succeed Pope Francis, potentially becoming the first modern pontiff from Asia. Agenda anchor Corina Sanchez Rojas spoke with Italian journalist and author Roberto Alborgetti, who shared why he believes Cardinal Tagle represents hope for a more global, pastoral, and humble Catholic Church.
So you know of our Filipino Cardinal Tagle?
Yes, I know because I met him during my work, during my research about Pope Francis, because I wrote 7 books about Pope Francis, and I wrote 2 when Pope Francis visited the Philippines. And I was really, how do you say, impressed about Tagle, Cardinal Tagle, because of his words, so simple but so deep. And I remember when Pope Francis in Philippines, in Manila, talked about our need to be simple in education, to communicate to our sons, to our daughters, the idea of the dream. We have to dream. And I remember Cardinal Tagle was really moved by this word, and so we published also a lot of photos about the meeting.
So you were telling me a while ago that you are actually rooting, hoping that Cardinal Tagle makes it.
Yes, I think in if we see what the bookmakers are saying, outside and inside Vatican's, I think Tagle is one of the leaders of this list, and so I think is the time to open the doors to Philippines, to Eastern world. This is the dream of Pope Francis. The new church is in the eastern part of the world.
Advocates for women's ordination released pink smoke from a hill near the Vatican just hours before 133 male cardinals from 70 countries entered the Sistine Chapel to elect the next pope. Organized by the Women's Ordination Conference, the protest aimed to highlight the exclusion of women from priesthood or deaconate in the Catholic Church. For the group, the pink smoke served as a symbolic distress signal, drawing attention to the all-male conclave, making decisions for a church where women make up half the membership. While Pope Francis included women as voting members in the 2023 Synod, ordination remains off limits.
This is a sin and a scandal. And so we are here, an international group of women's ordination advocates, lifting up pink smoke as a sign of hope that the church might quickly work to bring women in as equals in every part of the life of the church. Smoke can also be considered a distress signal. And so our pink smoke is also a sign that the church needs to change quickly, that this is a tipping point moment. And many women are looking at the conclave and the future of the church to see and asking themselves, is there a place for me here?
And that's it for Business 360 today. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.